Hello, everyone. I'm Howie.
I'm Allie.
Welcome to the Opinionated podcast.
It's opinionated.
Well, that's one person's opinion.
It's the correct opinion.
So this podcast is dedicated to storytelling, any form of story, movies, books, short stories, comics, video games, music, poems, whatever. If we find it an intriguing enough story that it evokes some kind of emotion from us, or we just think it's interesting, like it's open for discussion here.
Mm-hmm.
So to introduce ourselves, I'll start. I'm Howie. I'm a nerd, a geek, a film buff, and a historian. I'm not a film historian, but being a historian, I know how to research, and Allie will tell you that if I'm even a little bit interested in something, I will research the crap out of it.
He's not kidding.
Yeah, just for my own fun, like for no other reason, just because I want to know about it. So what I bring to the table is just copious amounts of useless information.
Yeah. And I'm Allie. I am an award-winning and produced screenwriter, and I'm also I have my bachelor's in creative writing with a major in English and a minor in fiction writing. So I bring a lot of different things to the table compared to him.
Yeah, so she comes at it from script writing, like the actual action of storytelling, and I come at it from a more kind of broader perspective. So that's what we bring to the table in this.
All right, let's get started. Today we'll be doing Solo, a Star Wars story, which was produced in 2018 and produced. Is it produced or directed? Directed by Ron Howard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so how this is going to go, we're going to start off by giving a brief but not very brief summary of the movie. So if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert. And then we're going to discuss, things that worked for us, things that didn't work for us, how we thought of the characters and stuff like that. Ron Howard being the director, the interesting thing is, I don't think people really understand how much good work, not only how much work he's done in total, but also how much of that work Ron Howard's done has been awesome.
Incredible.
He did he directed the Jim Carrey Grinch movie. He won an Oscar for A Beautiful Mind. He directed those the Tom Hanks the Da Vinci Code films. A bunch of other stuff that he's been involved in since, obviously being Richie Cunningham on Happy Days. But yeah, it's but he actually. So another fun fact, again, getting to the useless information. George Lucas actually approached him to direct Phantom Menace Episode 1. He was one of several directors that Lucas approached, but they all pretty much said, "Well, George, why don't you just direct it yourself?" And that's what wound up happening, for better or worse. But yeah, Ron Howard actually got, he wasn't the first choice for this movie. This movie started with other directors whose names we didn't pull up, because honestly, I don't know what percentage of the movie, very early in production. It wasn't like a Justice League situation where Zack Snyder steps away when the movie's mostly done, and then they have Joss Whedon come in and basically almost redo the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was very early, and they just started having conflicts with Disney / Lucasfilm about the direction of the movie and stuff, and so they got fired, and then they called in Ron Howard to.
Hi, post edit, Allie and Howie here. Turns out I was actually very mistaken about Ron Howard being brought in early in the production. He was actually brought in very, very late And the same thing with Rogue One, we found out too, looking into it, right? Basically,
the director was replaced at the end.
yeah, like, well, with Rogue One, basically, they were in post-production, and then the whole movie got reworked by a completely different guy in post-production. But with Solo, basically, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Disney was like it's the cliched, creative differences. Apparently, they wanted a more kind of like improvisational type of environment and stuff for the scenes, and that's not how Disney works. That might have gone into how or why they cast Beckett. Woody Harrelson, because Woody Harrelson's very good at improvising his lines. It's kind of how he injects a lot of himself into his characters that we talk about. But yeah, basically a huge portion of the movie was shot, but then things just weren't working out. Things weren't getting done because they were trying to do so much improvisation, and so they parted ways with Lord and Miller and called in Ron Howard to reshoot stuff that they felt didn't work and basically finish up the movie.
I don't know if you remember this, but a lot of the reporting of this was one of the reasons why people think that the movie didn't do so well at the box office. Because, if there's a bunch of bad publicity about a movie, people are less likely to go and see it. If articles are constantly coming out about just chaos backstage and stuff like that, people are like, oh, this movie's gonna be a mess, I'm not gonna go see it. But we are gonna get into kind of like reasons why we feel this movie didn't do so hot at the box office. But yeah, that's just one of the reasons. Is kind of that the change in directors. But you have anything to say about any of that? I know I just kind of went on a long-winded rant there.
You're fine.
It's gonna be one of many.
Yeah, that's what you do. Lots of information. I have no idea how you pulled most of that out of your butt.
Well,
came out of nowhere.
It's
awesome to know, though. It gives me more appreciation for Ron.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not a perfect filing system. It works.
Indeed.
But
it's also very disturbing.
Yeah. But for those of you who don't know and who can't tell by the title, the movie is about Han Solo, specifically a young Han Solo, and essentially the story of kind of how he came to be the guy that we meet in Star Wars: A New Hope. Played obviously by Harrison Ford in the original trilogy. In this one, he would be played by a guy by the name of Alden Ehrenreich. I think it's a very German name. I'm not sure how. I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced, but
better than me.
Yeah. But yeah, I know you have strong feelings about that, but we'll get to that.
I'll wait.
Yeah. So, do you have anything to say before we, before we get started on the brief, not very brief summary?
Nope. Let's roll.
Okay. So basically, we start off the movie on the planet Corellia with young Han and his love interest, a woman played by Emilia Clarke named Kira, and they, apparently just pulled some kind of scam and are fleeing some people. What they stole was some hyperfuel, aka coaxium, makes all the light speed travel that you see in Star Wars possible, and it's apparently worth tons and tons of money. And so they wind up going to the head of this criminal organization that they kind of work for, who says that Han and Kira they owe them that coaxium, like that job was for them, and they just kind of run away. And their plan is to run to a spaceport, and use the coaxium to bribe somebody to like let them onto a ship so they can get off Corellia, because apparently Corellia is just a crime infested hellhole, and so they go about doing that, but Kira gets caught. Well, the person they try to bribe like basically takes the coaxium and then raises the alarm. Kira gets caught. Han gets through the first gate, but basically when he seems like he's going to be caught, like he ducks the security guards by basically enlisting in the Imperial Navy, saying that he's going to be the best pilot in the galaxy, which is pretty much what everybody in all of Star Wars says. I'm going to be the best pilot in the galaxy. No one's like, I'm going to be an okay pilot.
Kind of reminds me of Top Gun.
You're lucky to be here. Thank you, sir. Just want to serve my country, be the best fighter pilot in Navy, sir. Don't screw around.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean that's the point of the school in Top Gun, is to see who's the best fighter pilot. Oh, be the best fighter pilot in Navy, sir.
Mm-hmm. There it is. Well,
Don't get me started on a Top Gun quote off. All right? We'll be here all night. We'll start talking about Top Gun instead of Solo.
That's true.
But so this him enlisting in the Navy, he tells the guy who's enlisting him that when the guy's like name, and he says Han, he doesn't have a last name, and so the Imperial officer just just think the look on his face, he just thinks he's so clever, going Han Solo.
Solo.
Is weird, because Solo is Italian for alone, so it implies the existence of the Italian language in the galaxy far, far away. Which was, I get it, it's supposed to be like a joke, but like. I guess it's whatever, because if the British accent could make it all the way over there, then I guess so could the Italian language. And I guess if you're watching The Mandalorian, Bill Burr is a recurring character, so the Boston accent made it all the way there too.
Me, I was never really into pets. Yeah, I didn't have the temperament, patience. I tried, but never worked out. But I'm thinking, maybe I'll try again. This little fella.
That's awesome.
She doesn't watch The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I don't.
So. But yeah, so, and then we fast forward. I think it's like 3 years later, and Han is not a pilot. He is basically just a generic infantry grunt in the Imperial Army. He's in the middle of when the story catches up to him, he's in the middle of a battle. It seems like it's not going well for either side. They're kind of stuck in like a World War I-ish like standoff where both sides are in these huge trenches and stuff like that. And this is where we meet the other, a few of the other main characters for the rest of the movie. Woody Harrelson as Tobias Beckett, and Woody Harrelson. So Woody Harrelson and Billy Bob Thornton. Those are the two people that can get away with wearing wigs.
I'm Galaxia. That's my German name.
Great.
So, where are you from originally, Hebrew Melvin?
In movies, and nobody bats an eye. Like, it actually looks
really good.
Yeah, it looks good. Like everyone else, it's like, I don't know what you're saying, sir, because I'm distracted by
whatever that is on your head.
Like, but yeah. So we get Thandaway Newton. I think that, I'm not sure if that. Don't sue me if that's not how it's actually pronounced. But Thandaway Newton as Val, who is Tobias Beckett's kind of like
Right hand lady.
Right, yeah, but they're also like, clearly in some kind of relationship. I don't know if they're married or whatever, but like they're obviously like in a Bonnie and Clyde type of relationship. And then an alien by the name of Rio, who was voiced by Jon Favreau, who we all know because he basically runs the show he runs the Mandalorian, and also he started the MCU, essentially plays Happy Hogan in the MCU. But yeah, so essentially those three are all impersonating Imperial troops in order to steal some kind of like industrial ship. And Han essentially figures out that they're not actually Imperial soldiers because Beckett's armor is covered in like blaster burns and stuff like that. So it becomes obvious that he took it off of a dead officer. But Beckett is like, Han is like, hey, let me join you, and they're originally. Beckett is kind of like, maybe, but then Han threatens to like sell him out, like, well, if you don't let me join, then maybe I just tell somebody that you're impersonating an Imperial officer. But because he's dressed as an Imperial officer, he just turns around. It's like Allie and I are both veterans of the Army, and we can both attest to the idea that essentially, if you just act like you know what you're doing and what you're talking about, everyone's gonna believe you.
It reminds me of Top Gun again.
Yeah, like in the second
Maverick.
Right, in the second in Top Gun Maverick, like
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. They're running. Maverick and Rooster are running in an enemy airfield, but they're in their flight suits, but they are running like they know where they're going, so nobody bothers them.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many.
We loved it because it's so real.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I got out of work because I was walking around with a folder full of papers, like I knew where I was going. Like if anybody who's active duty in the military, if you need to get out of work, just have a clipboard or a folder full of papers. You only need to have something on the top page. Everything else can just be blank, rubbish, and just walk around like you know what you're doing, know where you're going. No one's gonna bother you.
But you didn't hear that from us.
No one. I promise.
Your expression.
But that being said, so they take Han prisoner for being a deserter, and they throw him into this giant mud hole, and they saying like, oh, we haven't fed the beast. They're feeding him to a monster, and like, oh, we haven't fed the beast in a week or something like that. Turns out the beast is Chewie. Yay!
It's Chewie.
Yay, Chewbacca. And basically Chewie is about to kill Han, but then Han starts speaking in Wookiee.
That's pretty spot on.
Yeah. While he's like,
That's pretty good. Oh my god.
But then like he just proceeds to speak normal, galactic basic, which is English for the non-nerds in the audience.
Okay.
Like he just starts speaking like normal to him, like he does like in all the other freaking Star Wars movies, and like it's whatever. But Chewie doesn't kill him, but instead he kind of like Han comes up with an idea for them to escape, where Chewie essentially uses Han as a battering ram to
you're my weapon.
Yeah, to knock down a load-bearing pole to bring the cage down. And then they escape, and basically because they escaped, it convinces Beckett and Rio overrule Val, who still doesn't want to take him, but they're like, kid's got spunk, he's got moxie, and we could use the strength of a Wookiee.
He's not beige.
Yeah,
he's got pizzazz. I can't do it.
It's a horrible walking impression.
It wasn't. It wasn't what I started.
It's terrible.
I was just going
It's
with
terrible.
pizzazz. I just couldn't remember the word.
It's terrible.
There are two types of people in the world. Those who are content to blend in. These people walk through life like beige socks.
You're the
after this
not
video,
me.
after this video, go like YouTube, friggin' Christopher Walken beige commercial, and you'll see how terrible.
I wasn't doing an impression. I don't do impressions. I am the worst in the whole world.
Beige.
There we go. I was hoping he'd do it.
Beige.
Punch it, Kevin.
Punch it, Richard. Come on.
It's crazy. Fun fact: Christopher Walken was almost cast as Han Solo in the original trilogy. Like that's who George Lucas originally wanted. Like
That's crazy.
Harrison. Well, actually, sorry. No. I was about to start talking about Indiana Jones, but yeah, he wanted Christopher. He also wanted Al Pacino for Luke.
That's crazy.
Imagine the alternate reality where.
So weird.
Yeah, imagine the alternate reality where Christopher
I don't want
Walken.
to. That's not a world I want to live in.
Christopher Walken is Han and Al Pacino is Luke.
I mean, Han, that's okay. I love Harrison, but, that's great.
But yeah, anyhow, moving on. So they bring him onto this this ship, and like it's not like a big ship. It is essentially like a forklift that can go into space, but Han and Chewie need to clean up. So what do?
They get in the shower together.
We couldn't have done this maybe like one at a time.
Like, why is that necessary? It's so hilarious. It's so gross.
Yeah, I mean, well, and the thing is, like, my thing is that, like, I don't even understand, like, why a ship that size and for that function would even have a shower. Maybe I could see, like, a toilet, but, like, why would it have a shower? Like,
I could see some form of comic relief because it got me.
Well, yeah, like obviously,
story, that's not something you really do.
I mean, stuff.
If it doesn't flow, like it didn't really flow, but it was funny.
I mean, we could have, could have just as easily just like clipped over to them being all cleaned up, and no one would have batted an eye and been like, "Oh, they get themselves cleaned up."
Yeah,
like, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
It would have been fine. But they had to
make it weird.
Yeah. But, so they get to where they're gonna pull this job, and essentially the job is to steal a like a train cart full of this coaxium, which we know from earlier is extremely valuable. So this group of kind of like guerrilla warriors called the Cloud Riders show up and basically kind of mess up the job for them. Val and Rio wind up dying. Well, also, okay, so before the job starts, Beckett, Woody Harrelson, essentially disassembles like a rifle and turns it into just a normal blaster, and that's the explanation of how Han gets his famous blaster, which is like his version of like Clint, Dirty Harry's 44 Magnum. So, the main, like, I find that the main purpose of this movie is to kind of like address how Han gets a lot of his famous tools, traits, stuff like that. Kind of like the prologue of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It answers how Indy got his hat and his whip, and they even did a thing where he gets the Harrison Ford scar on his chin that was given to him by Sean Bean. That's right, Ned Stark cut cut the chin of Indiana Jones and Han Solo.
More useless information that we love.
Yeah. So the job goes awry. Val and Rio die. And then they have to basically justify, this the loss of money, the coaxium, to a crime syndicate leader by the name of Dryden Voss, who works for Crimson Dawn. Dryden Voss is played by Paul Bettany, who we know as Vision from the MCU. Most famously, but he's in a bunch of stuff.
Thank you for putting a face to that.
You mean besides the face in the movie?
Well, I'm saying, like, who that is.
Yeah. So, and Dryden is going to kill him. You failed me, so I'm just going to kill you. But, because, they decide, he's like, oh, there's no other way to get that much coaxium, so I'll just kill you. But Han comes up with the idea to, since they were trying to steal refined coaxium, why don't they steal some unrefined coaxium, because it's much less heavily protected. And then, also while they're there, Han meets up again with Kira, Emilia Clarke's character again. And when they first meet, it's in this big party, and it's not really clear why she's there.
I thought about you a lot. Of somewhere, some adventure. I imagined myself with you. It always made me
there. But then it becomes clear that she's Dryden Voss's right-hand woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Han comes up with this plan, he essentially turns to her, and it's like, should I trust him with this plan? And she's like, yeah, sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, okay, fine, but you're gonna go with, make sure it gets done right. And she's like, okay, and so first things first, they need a ship, and for some reason, Dryden Voss can't just give them a ship, even though he's extremely wealthy and powerful, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But they decide
it can't be easy.
Yeah, well, they need right. Yeah, I mean, they need a reason to introduce, of course, Lando Calrissian,
of course,
played by Donald Glover, and the Millennium Falcon, and so. Han is asking Kira where they can get a ship, and she's like, "Oh, I know a pilot with a ship," and then it turns out it's Lando Calrissian, and they go to this gambling den. It's also kind of a fighting pit. Basically, if it can be gambled on, they're gambling on it there.
Mm-hmm.
And Han essentially goes up to Lando and is like, "Hey, if I beat you in cards, you help us pull this job, or you give us your ship or whatever." And turns out Han is very good at cards, so much so that Lando has to cheat to beat him. He has a card up his sleeve that the camera shows us he uses to beat Han, but Han is like, he cheated. I know because
there's no way.
Yeah, he did the math and figured out that the card he used was one too many in the deck. But Kira and Beckett are like, well, how you gonna prove it?
Mm-hmm.
So then they just kind of ask him to do it, and he says yes. They give him a cut of the take, but they just wind up asking him anyway. And logic says, you should just started with that.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of pointless, but I get it.
Yeah. Well, they this was all a big foreshadowing moment. So it's whatever. It's understandable at the end of the movie.
It kind of has a point.
Yeah. So they get to the ship, and it turns out Lando has a co-pilot by the name of L337.
I was going to talk about how Beckett, it's almost his only real section where we get to see his personality really shine, besides at the ship where, well, not at the ship, but in the beginning where Han and Beckett first meet. You get to see his personality there, where he kind of overpowers and shows that he's better and bigger than Han. And we get him again where he's like overpowering Lando. Like, oh, you want this percentage, you're not getting it, you're getting this instead. And they just keep bickering back and forth until Beckett wins.
Yeah, I mean, Beckett, the character, like, he kind of takes a back seat for, like, this huge, for, like, the entire middle section of the film. Like, he kind of takes a back seat to Han, Lando, and Kira, and everything that's going on there. So he doesn't really have a lot to do until the very end again, but we'll get into that. But yeah, so the co-pilot, L337, she's like, you know, her function is that, you know, she has, you know, her internal memory has the best map of the galaxy, I guess, like in the galaxy. And, but also she's like a kind of a, you know, like a, she's constantly talking about like the inequality of like droids in the galaxy. But other than that, it's, you know, like the big joke is that Lando is in love with her despite being a droid.
Yeah,
So-
she acts like she's not really that into him, kind of. Whenever she's talking to Kira, kind of girl talking with her, which is kind of weird.
Uh-huh.
And then, yeah, we see him later on having feelings.
Yeah. But so the plan is to do the famous Kessel Run that is mentioned in A New Hope. You know, when Obi-Wan is, you know, well, when Han is like, "You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon? Should I have?"
What's your best impression right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get through it. All right, you know, and Han is like, "The Millennium Falcon, it's the ship that did the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs."
You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's the ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs.
And, you know, just answering a question from Han's past presented in the original trilogy, like this is going to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
But to get to Kessel, you know, the planet where all the coaxium is mined, the Kessel Run, just, you know, you have to go through this thing, this kind of like permanent lightning storm in space called the Maelstrom. You just made that face for the camera.
Sorry.
For those of you who are just listening, not watching, our dog
That
just
was a weird poop face.
our dog just sat on her foot. And, you know, she made like a very strange face.
It's just my face.
Yeah. But yeah, they have to go through this maelstrom that leads to the planet Kessel, where all the coaxium is mined, and but while they're traveling there, like Han and Kira Han tries to kind of rekindle their relationship. Kira is being all like, I'm not
Things
that girl.
have changed
Yeah,
for me.
I'm not that girl anymore.
Yep.
And Han is like, well, I'm a bad guy too. I'm not a good guy either. You know.
And she tries to explain, like, this is my career on the line, and this is my life now. Like, I'm not the girl that you once knew.
But Han doesn't care, and so they have make-out session in Lando's closet, which is filled with capes.
What I've done.
Which is, you know, a joke, because like in the original trilogy, every time you see Lando, he's wearing a cape, like every time. So that's the joke. But they get to Kessel, and in another callback to the original trilogy, Han and Chewie are pretending to be prisoners of Kira, while Beckett and L3 are pretending to be Kira's bodyguards. And also, it should be said, Beckett is wearing the same costume that Lando wears as a disguise in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. So, but yeah, the plan is essentially the same as, you know, the plan in A New Hope to rescue Leia. Essentially, they pretend to escort the prisoners, inside, and then once everyone's inside, they kind of just do their thing to get the coaxium. So once Han and Chewie are inside, they start like a prison riot essentially. L3 and Beckett take over the security room and unlock everything for them. And because Kira is in a room by herself with the head administrator of the prison, she just kind of kicks his butt. It's like the one like kick butt moment she has.
Whoa! I have never seen anyone do. What was that?
Terrace Kasi. Dryden taught me.
As in the movie that I remember.
Yeah.
Besides the fight at the end, but like that's really her and Han. It's not just her. Yeah. So.
I'm yours.
But yeah, so while they're escaping the mines, L3 is shot and he's mostly destroyed. And this is where we see Lando like it's kind of presented as a joke at first when L3 tells Kira that Lando's in love with her. But then we actually see he is, because when she's shot, he starts breaking down and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they get her, her back on the ship. And because he's like mourning and boo-hooing, Han has to pilot the ship. Well, I mean, that's what he's doing.
Boo-hooing.
He is.
Boo.
Han has to pilot the ship, and this is a running theme. Like, nobody wants to let Han pilot anything, but anytime he's given the opportunity to pilot something, like, he kills it. So it's like, so it's this again. Like, Lando piloted the ship to Kessel, but now Han has to pilot it out of Kessel, and so when they're going through the maelstrom again, a Star Destroyer is waiting for them because the mines of Kessel are imperially controlled, obviously because they want a monopoly on the coaxium market. And so Han, again, in another call out to the original trilogy, so in Empire Strikes Back, to dodge the Imperials, like he goes into a asteroid field,
Mm-hmm.
And so now he goes into the maelstrom, not in the weird tunnel that the maelstrom has for people to fly through,
yep.
Into the storm itself. So, but this time the Star Destroyer doesn't follow them, just a bunch of TIE fighters. Beckett gets into the gunner seat that we see in A New Hope and shoots a couple of them, but most of them just kind of get destroyed by the maelstrom itself. But they don't really know, they don't really have a way out of it. And so, because L3's internal memory core has the best map of the galaxy, basically they plug her into the ship to download her into the ship. So basically she becomes the ship's Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of maps them a way out. And so they take it after almost being devoured by a monster out of H.P. Lovecraft's worst nightmares.
It's true. It's weird.
And then they get to the planet Severine to refine the coaxium, but then the Cloud Riders meet up with them again and essentially tell them hey, we're all victims of Crimson Dawn. we need the coaxium to keep fighting them and the Empire, so we appreciate if you just gave it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Han and Kira and Chewie want to help them. Beckett doesn't. He's like, no, I pulled this job. I want to get paid and retire. And so basically, they construct a plan with Beckett to essentially swindle Dryden Voss. And then they go to meet him. But it turns out Beckett does the obvious thing where he betrays them. It turns out he told Dryden Voss ahead of time that the coaxium that they're giving him was gonna be fake.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that they knew.
They bluffed.
Yeah. Well, they knew. Yeah, they knew Beckett was gonna betray them, so they actually brought the real stuff. And Beckett kills all of Dryden Voss's bodyguards and essentially walks out with the coaxium. He makes Chewie lift it and walks out with them. And so Kira and Han are left there with Dryden. And so those two basically team up to kill Dryden.
Mm-hmm.
And Han and Kira have this conversation where they're like, hey, look, Han's like, run away with me. Let's just, let's leave Crimson Dawn and everyone else behind. Let's just, we'll figure everything out as we go. And Kira, again tries to be like, I'm not, the same person anymore. But then she's like, okay, fine. But she tells Han to leave, and she's like, I'll be right behind you. We gotta pay for a ship somehow, so I'm gonna. Take
collect
all
some of his things.
Like Dryden has all these valuables in his office, and so she's like, I'm gonna. Basically, she's implying that she's gonna gather up all this stuff so they can pay for a ship.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they can't just take Dryden's ship now, but whatever. Meanwhile, Han goes to meet Beckett somehow. Winds up in front of Beckett.
It's really strange.
Like you can see behind Beckett
I came as fast as I could.
The ship that they just left.
Yep.
That Han just left. Like literally 5 seconds ago in the movie.
Yep.
Just left it.
And all he says is,
and
I
it's
came
like
as fast as I could, buddy.
Yeah, it's like way in the background too. It's like miles off.
Yep.
Doesn't but then it'd be one thing if he caught up to him. That's fine. That makes sense.
Instead, it's like 10-minute head start.
But like instead, like he winds up in front of him somehow, waiting for him like at the top of this hill, and it's like I don't like, it just doesn't make sense. And as far as I know, in all my readings of the Star Wars literature. I don't think they have transporter beams like in Star Trek, so I don't see how he could have gotten there.
Yeah, unless it was going to be like a spinoff of explaining it later.
Yeah, I mean, or just obviously, I guess he could have like taken a speeder, but then like went like way around so that like Beckett and nobody else saw him riding. I guess I don't know, but like it just didn't make sense for him to pop up in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up behind him, whatever. That's fine. It makes sense. But yeah, so Beckett is like, okay, kid, you've learned a lot, but I'm gonna teach you, one last lesson, and pay attention because this is the most important lesson. But before he can say anything, Han shoots him. And, essentially he dies in his arms. And he's like, I really was going to retire, and learn this musical instrument that he's been talking. It's been a running joke throughout the movie. But he just kind of dies. And then as he dies, you see, the ship that Kira stayed on, takes off because while Han was doing all that stuff, she had a meeting with Darth Maul from Episode 1, the Clone Wars and Rebels, and also various books and comics and video games and whatnot. But that's besides the point. So she has a meeting with Darth Maul, who's the leader of Crimson Dawn, basically saying like, yeah, Beckett betrayed everybody, killed Dryden Voss and everybody else. I'm the only one who survived, so I'll be taking over Dryden's like section of the of Crimson Dawn.
Yeah, because she is who she said she was all along. She just wanted power. She wanted to rise up in the ranks.
Well, she also knows that this is the only way to protect Han.
Yeah.
Like, the only way, like, otherwise
he's a dead man.
Yeah, otherwise, Crimson Dawn, Darth Maul would have been after him.
Mm-hmm.
So she put all the blame on Beckett, who just died. And so and it should be said that Lando had already taken off at this point. He took off when the Cloud Riders confronted them on Severine. Like, we don't see Lando like be like, oh, I'm out of here. Like, Han just is like, hey, in that ship we got 20. We got 20 hired guns armed to the teeth. And then Lando's like, and then you see the Millennium Falcon just take off and beat it. So. But Han gives the coaxium to the Cloud Riders, and then him and Chewie kind of do the like. They're kind of just walking off, almost like at the end of Dumb and Dumber, Harry and Lloyd. Like, yeah, we'll get our chance too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll catch our break too.
But the very end of the movie is Han and Chewie catching up to Lando, and playing cards with him again. But this time, Han, when they first see Lando, Han hugs him, and then basically sits down to play cards. And again, because Han, I guess, is an incredible card player, he gets Lando to bet his ship, the Millennium Falcon, again. And this time, because they hugged, Han took the card that he knows Lando has up his sleeve. So Lando doesn't have it up his sleeve now. And so Han lays down, Lando lays down his hand. It's still a pretty good hand, but then Han lays his down, and it's an even better hand. And then, but Han's like, too bad you didn't have this card, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But that's how and that's how Han gets the Millennium Falcon, again, answering the whole thing from Empire Strikes Back when Lando's like, what did you do with my ship? And Han's like, your ship? I want it from you fair and square.
What have you done to my ship? Your ship? Hey, remember, you lost her to me fair and square.
And that now we know
another
how.
Answer.
Yeah. And the last scene, the last image that we see is Han and Chewie in the Millennium Falcon shooting off into light speed. Han is talking about going to Tatooine to meet up with the up-and-coming crime boss, see about a job. And we know that is Jabba the Hutt, and that kind of becomes what Han does. Becomes a smuggler for Jabba, and that's and that leads him to where we see him in A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
So that is Solo: A Star Wars Story. Again, a brief but not very brief summary.
It's how we roll.
Yeah. Well, because we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff, I wanted to make it. I don't like. I want them to know what we're talking about.
No, I agree.
But so overall, again, this movie was kind of not divisive in the same way that like The Last Jedi was divisive, where like some people love it, some people hate it, or really it seems like half the fandom half the fandom loves it, half the fandom hates it. All this stuff. Solo's divisive in the sense that like pretty much it's either whether you've seen it or not. Because everybody who I've talked to who's seen it finds it enjoyable. They enjoy it. We enjoyed it.
Yep.
But a lot of people just haven't seen it.
Yep.
So did you want to say how you felt about the movie, like overall?
I mean, I enjoyed it, and I was one of those people because I like the original saga. So I wanted, the actual storyline. I didn't want some side plot, and it wasn't Harrison. And like, I'm a huge fan of Harrison. Like, we have 2 boy cats, of course, a girl cat, but her name is not important in this situation. She is part of the Game of Thrones situation. Compliments of him.
Yeah.
But my boys are Han and Harrison for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But like, so I didn't want to give it a chance, but then I actually watched it. We watched it together and I loved it. It was great. Of course, Alden is not Harrison, and I feel like he executes pretty well, but there's some parts that, it's not really my guy.
Well, it should be said that Harrison Ford himself said in an interview that he felt Alden absolutely killed it. So, obviously he was working for Disney at the time, so they might have just told him to say that. But Harrison Ford seems like the kind of guy who like doesn't really care about that because Harrison Ford, like, he doesn't actually care all that much about Han Solo the character. Like, he finds Indiana Jones, his other obviously major character, to be much more thrilling, a much more exciting character.
And there's plenty of story on him.
Well, yeah,
he's a real story guy.
I thought Han Solo should die. I thought he ought to sacrifice himself for the other two characters. He's got no mama, he's got no papa, he's got no future. He has no story responsibilities at this point. So let's allow him to commit self-sacrifice.
Well, yeah, like he just like like Star Wars is kind of like kind of like just a paycheck to him a little bit. Like he kind of hates how people constantly ask him about stuff, but he doesn't care. Like Mark Hamill, who obviously played Luke Skywalker, he loves it. Like he loves Star Wars. He loves Luke the character. Mm-hmm. He gets into it. Even James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader, he loves it. When people come up and talk to him about being Darth Vader in Star Wars, he loves it. Harrison, he doesn't care all that much about Han, other than it's a paycheck, and obviously it made him famous. But yeah, he said Alden killed it, and I think Alden did a mostly good job there, and we'll talk about this later. But there are times where I feel like he's not doing Harrison Ford. He's kind of just doing himself. But overall, I think he did great. Overall, I think the whole cast did great.
Yeah, they did.
For
I
what
agree.
Like
Emilia Clarke killed it. She is just incredible in everything she does.
Yeah, but overall, getting back to that, I think I enjoyed the movie. Me being a lifelong Star Wars fan, having taken in the comics and the books and the video games and everything my entire life, it's a good, enjoyable story. I don't have a ton of problems with it, even though I know when we're gonna I know there are parts where where the movie didn't make sense, where it seems like I have issues with the movie, but really it's overall I find it a very enjoyable Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm. Even with our qualms.
Yeah. But I think the main reason why, when Disney first bought Lucasfilm and Star Wars, when they finally started releasing stuff, it was like, machine gun fire, like bam, 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 bam. They released,
Releases.
they released Force Awakens. They restarted the Clone Wars for one more season. They started the other animated show Rebels. They and then they released Rogue One, which was going to be the first of supposed to be many sort of side stories. They were saying that they were going to do all these kind of spin-offs and side stories about other stuff going on in the galaxy, kind of before, during, and after the main Star Wars saga. And so Rogue One was the first one with that, and it also had a bunch of it also had a lot of chaos, but it wound up being a great movie, and people loved it. And then The Last Jedi came out, which is incredibly divisive, as I pointed out earlier. Like, people, like I said, it's people either love it or hate it. And I'm not, if you love it, fine, cool. We don't, for all kinds of reasons that we're not going to get into, because then we'll just start talking about that.
Yep.
But if you're one of the people that loves the movie, it's fine, whatever. It's all good. But a few months after The Last Jedi, Solo comes out, and Solo doesn't do well. And again, just a reminder, those are fireworks going off in the background. If you can hear them, they're not gunshots, I promise. We are recording this on the week of 4th of July.
And it's the weekend, so everybody who didn't do it during the week are doing it now.
Yeah, because it's kind of rainy on the 4th of July where we are. Mm-hmm. So people, if they didn't set off fireworks the day of, they're probably saving them for the weekend. So I guess we can get started as to why a lot of people didn't see this film. The reasoning, the most hypothesized reasons are A, that they were releasing Star Wars movies too frequently. They weren't special anymore. Mm-hmm. That's one theory. 2, that basically Solo was a movie that no one asked for. Like, no one really asked for a Han Solo origin story. Mm-hmm. And so people just didn't want it. Really, they, like Allie, they didn't want to see anybody besides Harrison Ford be Han Solo. So they're just like, we'll stay home. And then I already talked about kind of chaos in the like articles being written about the movie kind of being in chaos. So that might have convinced some people to stay home. But then there's theory D, which is the one that I subscribe to, where Last Jedi was so divisive that everybody who hated Last Jedi, well, not everybody, obviously, but a lot of the people who had a strong negative reaction to The Last Jedi just stayed home, just didn't go out and see Solo, because they're like, this, they're basically the people who, like, a lot of people are like, they're ruining Star Wars. I'm not going to support this. Mm-hmm. So they stayed home. And I think, I personally think that's the most reasonable and plausible explanation. The others probably played into it a little bit too, but I think just the divisiveness, like, people, like, the internet was still on fire arguing about The Last Jedi when Solo got released, and then
it was bad timing in general.
Yeah. but they could. I don't think they could have delayed the release because it wouldn't have been a good look.
Mm-mm.
You know. So, but what do you think?
No, I agree all the way across the board. Like, I subscribe to the exact same thing, so I'm with you. I don't really have much to add.
Yeah. So, as far as the characters, we were talking about how I feel that Alden did a good job as Han Solo overall. The issues that I have with him is that, so Harrison Ford in A New Hope, well, in the original trilogy, he just kind of has this kind of laid back drawl where all of his words kind of flow together, and he just he doesn't give a shit.
Yep.
He's just laid back, Luke is 10,000. We could almost buy our own ship for that. Yeah, and who's gonna fly it, kid? You?
10,000, all in advance.
10,000? We can almost buy our own ship for that.
But who's gonna fly it, kid? You?
You bet.
Or we'd like to not encounter any Imperial entanglements. Well, that's the real trick, isn't it? Just this
nonchalant, even under stress.
Yeah, nothing really, nothing bothers him. He doesn't care. Alden, there are times where he has that kind of swagger. Whenever he's negotiating something, he definitely keys into that. But there are other times where he just he sounds like he's talking like Alden and not Han Solo. He's yeah, so we're going to steal we stole the coaxium, we're going to use it to get a ship off of Corellia. He just enunciates too much. But overall, I think he did a pretty good job of playing Han.
Yeah, I enjoyed him.
Even though you would have been
I would have loved if they de-aged Harrison and just went for it. It could have been horrible, and I would have loved it.
We're not stealing for ourselves. We were hired by Crimson Dawn.
Crimson Dawn?
Now we owe them 100 keys of refined coaxium.
Right. We run. I'm already a deserter. What's the difference?
Wow. Yeah. De-aging technology generally gets a mixed reaction at best.
Yeah.
Especially if it's used for an entire movie, like it would have had to have been, in the movie The Irishman, where they de-aged Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino, and it just over the course of the movie, it really starts to become obvious. It becomes distracting after a while, and I'm personally glad they didn't do that. Even I know you would have enjoyed it.
I would have enjoyed it. Would it have been the same effect? No.
She already said, and I agree, that Emilia Clarke as Kira killed it.
Yeah. Even with limited time that she had, she was just incredible.
Yeah. Woody Harrelson as Tobias Beckett also killed it.
Yeah, he's always got that way about him where he's just kind of, I don't really know how to put words to how most of his characters actually are. He's got that aggressive feel, but he's so playful about it, if that makes sense.
Well, a lot of his characters are essentially just himself. A lot of Woody Harrelson movies feature Woody Harrelson playing Woody Harrelson.
And I love it.
Yeah. Not to say he's not a good actor. It's just that he injects a lot of himself into all of his characters, but it's, he's great at what he does, so nobody minds.
Mm-hmm. Anything, they create the role for him.
Yeah, Donald Glover as Lando. I think he did. I think it was, kind of good, not great. But I don't think it was because of Donald. I think it was because of the writing. I think they overplayed Lando being kind of this suave.
It was a little weird.
Almost almost like Hugh Hefner in space kind of thing, you know? Because I get
I definitely understand that.
right.
Though, yeah.
Well, yeah, no, because like when we first meet him in Empire Strikes Back, like he's doing all these like he's doing all the stuff with Leia, like kissing her hand and like just giving her all these compliments, and Han's like
supposed to be a ladies' man.
Well, yeah, like and Han's like you old smoothie.
Hello, what have we here? Welcome, I'm Lando Calrissian. I'm the administrator of this facility. And who might you be?
Leia.
Welcome, Leia. All right. You old smoothie.
Hello, sir.
So like I feel like they overplayed that entirely because like we never see Lando fight in this movie, even though he's also supposed to be a good fighter. He's also obviously a keen negotiator because he somehow wound up in charge of Cloud City in the original trilogy, and we don't see that. Like the writing doesn't do a lot for Lando as a character. I think Donald Glover did good with what he had. He didn't, he doesn't get a ton of screen time. What do you think?
I think his whole sexuality situation kind of weirded me out.
Like being sexually attracted to a droid.
Yeah, but I mean, to each their own. If that's your thing, that's your thing. Marry it. Don't want to have weird robot kids. I don't care.
Yeah,
as long as you're happy.
Yeah, it's whatever. They did like in the promotions. They were saying that like Lando, they decided he would be omnisexual, like being able to be sexually attracted to everything, to any sentient being. So it's whatever. Like there's no real basis for that in any of the old EU or the original trilogy or anything like that. But it's whatever.
Yeah, it just kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it, but I don't have anything against it. That's his thing. It's his thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, but like I said, it just goes to again, I think they just overplayed the whole he's a smooth ladies' man kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't, so
just take it up another notch.
Right. I think they took it too far. That's my point. That's obviously part of his character.
Yeah.
Being a suave, guy like that, but
they could put more time into the actual writing for his character and give him a better arc.
Well, yeah, there's not, and also we got to understand that these are supposed to be the young version of the characters, so maybe he's not a great negotiator yet, maybe he's not a great fighter yet, but you should see at least some of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Thandaway Newton as Val, good job. Very little screen time. Same thing with really the next three we're going to talk about: Thandaway, Paul Bettany, Jon Favreau. Their characters had very, very little screen time, but they all did good with what they had. Especially Jon Favreau, since his character was animated, so he was just doing voiceover. Paul Bettany's Dryden Voss. He's just kind of a cliched, angry gangster villain, which is, that's not to say that, it's a bad character. Like, if that's the character, that's the character. We can't have we can't have intense character depth for every single character in a movie. That's at the end of the day, when the reason we're there is to see Han Solo kick butt. You know what I mean? So we're not looking for a deep examination of the conflict of good and evil within Dryden Voss. It's there's no room for that. Nobody wants to see it. So it's okay that the character is just kind of this cliched, bad guy. But Paul Bettany did a good job with it.
Yeah.
Thandaway Newton did a good job as Val.
Yeah, I wish I feel like their writing wasn't fully there. I wasn't emotionally attached to Valerio whenever they died. It was just okay, moving on.
Yeah, they like they didn't get nearly enough time built up to where we can care about their deaths.
Yep.
And honestly, like even Beckett, like he's not like nobody really cares that Rio died, but like he's broken up about Val dying for like 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And then like he's mad at Han about the whole thing, but then again, like 45 seconds later, he kind of moves on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's never really talked about again.
Yeah.
So but the thing is, like the with the runtime of the movie, it's only like a 2-hour movie ish. I don't think they had enough room to kind of like deal with how losing Val would have changed Beckett's, personality, demeanor, attitudes, or anything. Like, there's just not enough room for it. And again, this movie, like, we're here to see young Han Solo. We're not here to see, Tobias Beckett, grieve over his, girlfriend or wife or whatever.
Best friend. Who knows?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Nothing else? Just you agree?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think so. But as far as like Beckett and Val as a couple, I think they're supposed to be a kind of a dark reflection of Han and Kira, like what they would be if they did run away.
Yeah.
Or eventually Han and Leia, like if Han and Leia ran away together, like ignored
their morals.
Well, yeah, like ignored the rebellion and just kind of like, again, like became a Bonnie and Clyde type couple.
Mm-hmm.
You do get the sense with Val and Beckett that like, they're like in the time that we see them, they're talking about retirement. You get the sense that they're always talking about retirement. Like it's always one job away, like one more job and then we'll retire. One more job and then we'll retire.
Mm-hmm.
It's not said, but like I said, you just get the feel of that, but then obviously they never get to, because
I feel like most people who retire end up like getting too bored and end up going back in if they can.
Well, that's besides the point. Like they're just, because they're criminals, like it's tough to retire, from that because like, you pull jobs for different bosses, organizations, or you do it on your own, but then you piss somebody off, so you need to do something else to get out from under some. It's just kind of like the cyclical thing, where you basically can't retire, and or you just really you talk about it, but then you like don't want to, and that's kind of you like in your heart of hearts you don't really want to, like Bonnie and Clyde, like the real Bonnie and Clyde, they basically were just going to keep robbing banks until and killing cops until somebody caught them and they got killed. Like they might have talked about stealing enough money to like go somewhere, buy a piece of land, away from everything, and then essentially changing their names and living in anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
But they never, like their actions prove that they never actually wanted to. And that's the kind of the feeling you get from Beckett and Val.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm doing most of the talking. You got anything to add?
You said it all. No, we're good.
Well, feel free to interrupt me so you can say something.
No, you're nailing it.
But,
it's all about getting it all out. It doesn't matter who's really saying it. So,
and the character of L3, we didn't look up who voices her. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, whoever that is. Yeah, she's co-starring. Yeah, she's co-starring in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny right now. So, Phoebe Waller-Bridge voices L337. She does a good job.
Yeah.
There's not a lot to the character. She literally just serves the purpose to become eventually the Millennium Falcon's Google Maps.
Yeah.
But what she does have, she's good.
Yep.
And that's Pretty much like what we can say about all the characters. Like other than Han and Kira, really, everyone else is just kind of there to serve like a singular purpose of the
to
movie.
Keep the story moving.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so the actors, what they're given, they do a good job with.
Yeah, there's no bad acting in this, in my opinion.
So do you want to talk about, the story, what worked for you, what didn't work for you?
I was going to talk about how it seems like everything is leading towards a spinoff. Like we talked about in our own personal time, like it seems like they're setting up for Kira to have her own little spinoff, and then like I looked into it, and there's supposed to be stuff, but since Solo didn't do really well, she didn't get what she was going for. And I know there's other spinoffs that was coming that like could be there based off of how they did the writing, but none of it was actually executed.
Yeah, so like the Cloud Riders and Kira, like, and even more adventures with Han and Chewie and Lando, I think was also supposed to get a spinoff of some kind. Like that all, like because Solo didn't do well at the box office, that all got squashed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, like the ending, it seems like that's all they were like Ali said, it seems like that's all they were really trying to set up. They weren't trying to like conclude the story, which obviously they can't conclude the story for Han because we know Han goes off, into the main saga, but like everything else it seems like they were just kind of trying to set up more content.
Mm-hmm.
And then that all just never happened. So, and that's the problem with like if you're making movies for these like big universes, is that like you're constantly setting up something else, and so then the movie can't really end on a final note.
Yeah,
because everything is still going to be going on. Like the intention is for everything else in the movie. Like you don't want to tie up all the loose threads. Sorry. You don't want to tie up all the loose threads because we need those loose threads to go off into something else for more content, more shows, more movies, more whatever.
I mean, they could set that up in dialogue and leave it alone instead of going off as hard as they did.
Well, but that's not how Disney works.
Yeah, I know, but that's how I would do it. Like whenever I do a setup,
in your face. Yeah.
When I do a setup, it's dialogue. Like I pitch towards something, and then you come back to it in a different movie, and it's there, and you're like, oh, that makes sense now. Instead, they had to waste time and not build up these other characters to make us really care. They had to, do all this extra stuff just to give it a chance to go other places. But they already had the setup. They didn't have to go through all that extra work. But it's either here nor there.
Yeah. So my big thing about the story overall.
Do that again. My.
No, I won't. My big thing about the story overall is that, like, so for those of you who don't know, before Disney bought Lucasfilm and Star Wars, there was this thing called the Expanded Universe, where authors, comic book writers, video game makers, and all this stuff, like, they put out all this media, all this different stuff, books, comics, video games, other smaller movies, stuff like that, that was part of the Star Wars lore, signed off by George Lucas and the higher-ups at Lucasfilm. Everything had the one rule that nothing can contradict something else or anything else. So basically everything was, because if you read comics, like the different writers for different characters, they're not really collaborating with each other. Mm-hmm. So sometimes each other write and say things that like kind of overlap and like contradict each other, and it creates kind of a messy universe.
Mhm.
Star Wars didn't really have that problem because nothing was allowed to contradict anything else. So when you submitted your work for editing, if they found it contradicted anything, like they would be, hey, you got to edit this somehow. So, and it was great, and like it told all these stories about. Well, at first they weren't allowed to cover anything from before A New Hope because George Lucas was still intending on making those movies, but so they were allowed to do side stuff for the original trilogy, like stuff happening while the rebellion is going on. But they were also allowed to do stuff for after Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
They were also allowed to do stuff like super far into the galaxy's past that has nothing to do with the saga, just giving history of the galaxy, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So stuff like Darth Bane, who I know you don't know, it doesn't matter. But like, just all this, all this content. I hate how the word content is being overused now, but really, I mean, it was just all this great stuff that added to, the Star Wars fandom. But then when Disney bought Star Wars, okay, they essentially said, okay, all the EU, it's no longer canon. We're going to label all of that as quote unquote legends. It's under the label legends.
Mhm.
Everything we do from here on out, that's the new quote unquote canon. And Kathleen Kennedy, she runs Lucasfilm. Well, after Disney bought it, they put her in charge of Lucasfilm. She did an interview where I knew, I had a bad feeling.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this.
I have a very bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
That's good.
And that's kind of what I said, because Kathleen Kennedy did an interview where she said, Star Wars isn't the MCU. We don't have all these years of comics to go back and refer to find stories from. And meanwhile, me with a Rolodex in my head of all the different Star Wars.
Wrong.
Yeah, all the different Star Wars books, comics, video games, all the stuff that I've taken in over my lifetime. I'm like, you have so much. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh God, this is, so basically they said all that stuff that came before Disney bought Star Wars, it doesn't count anymore.
Wrong.
Yeah, I'm telling you and anybody who listens
They're
this.
wrong.
You're wrong.
Because so this Han Solo origin story, it follows so many of the story beats from Han Solo's origins in the old EU or the Legends canon, whatever you want to call it. It follows so many of those same story beats. Stop. I talk with my hands. All right, I can't help it. I can't help it, okay? I'm a teacher. It's what I do. I can't help it. So you got me off track. So they clearly borrow so many story beats from the old EU that it gets to a point where it's like, why didn't you just do that? Why didn't you just do Han's origin from the EU?
Mm.
For those of you who are just listening, she's still making fun of me for talking with my hands, and I'm considering a divorce. But yeah. So for example, Han is from Corellia, all right, but Corellia is in this crime-infested hellhole. It's where most of the big ships in the Star Wars universe are made. So it's kind of like one of the places in the galaxy where there's always tons of jobs. So it's not this just industrial wasteland, at least from what I remember. But he's orphaned at a young age, but he knows his last name is Solo. That's not an invention by some super clever bilingual Imperial officer.
Oh, Solo. Can't do what you did, but it was so weird. Stop looking at me, Mr. Walk like an Egyptian.
Go away.
Can't.
But yeah, so he does have a girlfriend, but she I'm about to ban you from our debut episode of the podcast.
Well, hopefully this helps you not do it anymore.
I'm going to. I can't help it. It's either that or I sit with my arms folded, like I'm a jerk. But
We'll change our podcast to The Jerks and we'll both do it.
No, it's probably already a thing somewhere. But so can I continue? Are you done?
For now.
Yeah, it's like I feel like I'm talking to one of my students right now. You done? Can we move on now?
Go.
So he has a girlfriend, but she leaves. She doesn't rise up the ranks of a criminal organization. She leaves to join the rebellion, and Han does enlist in the Imperial Navy. Except in the movie, it says he's kicked out of the flight school, because he has a hard time following orders. Go figure.
Mm-hmm.
But in the old EU, he becomes a pilot, and so that's how he knows some Imperial protocol that he shows throughout the original trilogy, because he was a former Imperial. He gets kicked out of the Navy because he sees a couple officers beating up on Chewie and they're about ready to kill him, and he stops them. He saves Chewie's life. And we didn't really talk about Chewie as one of the characters, but this movie really didn't do a lot for Chewie.
You can't wipe them off. They're Hollywood.
Chewie.
No.
He's just kind of there because we need him to be in a Han Solo origin story. Obviously, he has to be.
Yeah.
But they don't really do a lot for him. We don't see we saw how Han gets his blaster. We don't see Chewie get his bowcaster. Chewie at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, he has the famous only one, rack of ammo across his chest.
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, he has two for some reason. And then we again see him only have one in A New Hope. So, but in the old EU, Chewie hangs around Han so much because he has a life debt. He saved his life.
Yeah, and it's not mentioned at all here.
Yeah, well, I mean, he didn't really save his life in this one. They kind of saved each other,
Mm-hmm.
Which is whatever. I mean,
they didn't touch on why he was hanging out with him and staying by his side at all times instead of going a separate way.
Well, I mean, I think it's just because they're, basically it's because he chooses to.
Mm-hmm.
In the prison breakout, we see Chewie. He goes off to save some Wookiees he sees being enslaved, but then he comes back to Han.
Mm-hmm.
I think the essential message is that he's with Han because he chooses to, which is in its own way a nice sentiment.
Yeah.
But in the old EU, he has a life debt to Han. He owes him his life,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't, and he finally repays it when he saves Han and Leia's children's life. Children, they don't have just one kid who becomes douchey Kylo Ren. They have.
Han Solo. I've been waiting for this day for a long time.
They have three children. They had three children, and Chewie saves them, and in doing so, he winds up dying, saving his life. Thus completing the circle.
Mm-hmm.
Giving his life. So the life debt is paid. So that's how Han gets kicked out of the Empire by saving Chewie's life. He does, he wins the Millennium Falcon in a card game with Lando. That's the same, and it's just again, like I said, it's you clearly, you clearly took story beats from the old EU. So much so that the story is so close that you might as well have just used that the established story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I personally, I think they didn't for two reasons. Because, like we talked about earlier, they wanted more content. They wanted they wanted to create characters,
spin-offs.
Yeah, for to make new shows, new movies, or whatever with. But then I think the other one is, I think if they use those stories, they would have had to give credit to the authors who wrote those stories. And Disney is, as far as last time I read, they're like a bunch of old EU authors are suing them because they're not paying them royalties for stories that they wrote for Lucasfilm back in the day. So if that's true, good for them. Hope they win. But yeah, so that's my big rant about the stuff that kind of bugs me about this movie. Is just like it's so. Oh right, yeah. So in the old EU, Han, so there's a law and there's an Alderaan law that says that because Princess Leia is a princess, she has to marry royalty, and so there is a royal Solo family of Corellia, and Han, basically they find some kind of family tree that shows that Han, is a descendant of this royal family that's gone extinct essentially. But Han essentially says basically once they're married, he tells Leia yeah, I'm pretty sure that I really doubt I'm actually related to them. I probably just have the same last name. So he
still got the girl,
right? I mean,
and the kids now,
right? I mean, it's a bogus law, obviously, but that's the point, but yeah, so it's just one of those things, I mean, I can understand why they didn't include that because it's not really a relevant detail for this story. But again, it's just one of those things. If you're gonna if the story is already so close, why not just
go for it?
Why not just But I mean, I know you haven't taken in any Star Wars media besides the main movies.
Yes,
and
I would love to know more about that. That's cool.
But anything about the movie bug you? That we haven't already
things, but
what?
Yeah, we've already discussed most of it, except for the Cloud Riders being
the
led by the 12-year-old
Ginger. Yeah, the Cloud Riders. They're supposed to be this this paramilitary guerrilla group fighting the Empire and Crimson Sun, but they're led by this 12-year-old Ginger girl who's also the leader of the main villains in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, that show that you didn't watch.
Mm-hmm.
She's the leader of another paramilitary organization, even though in that show she's instead of being 12, she's 17. So I get the messaging hey, young people, you can change things too. I get it. But out of all the people to lead this military organization, you're gonna choose a 12-year-old girl?
Yeah.
Really? And she says that her mom used to be the leader until she got killed, and it's but that kind of reverses the whole messaging of hey, young people, you can do positive change too. Because then the messaging becomes, hey, young people, as long as you're related to somebody else important, you can do positive change too. What do you think?
That literally wraps it up. That's everything.
Well, it's not everything.
That we have notes on.
Well, so
I'm sure you have plenty more.
No, it's just I joked about it when we were giving the summary, but the monster in the middle of the maelstrom it's literally like
Lovecraft.
yeah, I think it's something that they literally ripped from Lovecraft because that's literally something that that's all like Lovecraft's like Cthulhu mythos like is just all these like massive tentacle monsters like just living in space. They don't really do anything except be just like kind of malevolent, destructive forces. But like we said before, like I think the main point of the story is less to kind of tell the story, or the main point of this movie is less to tell the story of young Han Solo. Here's the thing: I'm doing most of the talking, so I keep yeah. Okay, fine. You take over. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's pretty much everything, though. So
it's not.
It is.
No, it's not. We
have notes on.
No, we still have more.
Where?
Well, there's.
It's not in notes, so off the head, go.
Are you gonna keep making fun of me?
Hello.
So the main point seems to be like we said before, it's less about telling the story and more about like just kind of filling in gaps, answering questions about like how did Han get this blaster? How did Han get the Millennium Falcon? How did Han how did Han and Chewie meet? All this stuff, instead of just telling
the story,
the story, and so
or having sequel potential in
right
there.
And so the big thing is like the whole in the main saga that's said over and over again, the Millennium Falcon is the fastest ship in the galaxy. You got to take her. She's the fastest ship in the fleet.
Yep.
But in reality, but like Han, when he tells Obi-Wan that the Millennium Falcon is the ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. So a parsec is a measurement of space, a measurement of distance, not time or speed. And so everyone it's like, okay, well, that's either a big like editing flub from George Lucas, who just wrote in parsec and didn't realize it was a measurement of distance, or basically the old EU justified it by saying that like, well, the Millennium Falcon isn't actually all that much faster than other ships in the fleet, if they're even faster at all. It's more that the computer in the Millennium Falcon has it basically has a computer that can make routes better that's in light speed, and that's what makes it faster, and that's how it was able to do the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. Because taken at face value, it's like saying you did a 100-yard dash in 80 yards. It doesn't make any sense. So that's why, and people have said like that's why Obi-Wan kind of gives him this look like, what, like, okay, bro, whatever you say. And for him, okay, bro, whatever you say. Al Guinness with his high pitched British voice, but yeah.
And that being L3.
Yeah, and that's the purpose that L3 ultimately served. Even though, and here's the thing, like L3 is never mentioned again, and that's what I hate that's the danger in doing something that takes place before something that's already been established.
Yep.
If you add something in, like
to make it better, that's one thing.
Well, no, it's like so they're adding this in to give more context for why the ship was able to do the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. Okay, fine, but the fact that you're basically, if you're just saying, like, they could have just addressed that by basically saying Lando souped up like the mapping in the Millennium Falcon. They didn't need to basically give the map a personality, because L3, the character, is never mentioned again, before or since. So it doesn't make sense to add in a character whose sole purpose is to eventually become the map of the Millennium Falcon when it's never going to be mentioned again.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're saying the same thing differently.
Okay. So the other big thing that I want to talk about, it's not really so. Again, for those of you who aren't into the nerdosphere like me, so there's this whole debacle with in the Star Wars fandom about just called Han Shot First. So when George Lucas went to remaster the original trilogy with more modern technology to add in stuff that he wanted to have in the original movies but couldn't because of limited technology, he also went back and changed this meeting between Han and Greedo that we all know is famous, where Greedo basically has a blaster aimed at Han, and they're sitting in the booth in the cantina, and Greedo's like, "I'm gonna hand you over to Jabba the Hutt," and Han basically just blasts him. So in the original release, they're like Greedo doesn't even get a shot off. Greedo just literally, and Greedo's kind of like the like the worst bounty hunter in the galaxy. Like in all the lore, he constantly just like he goes on a bounty hunt and just constantly gets outsmarted by the people he's hunting or the other bounty hunters, and like he's just kind of everybody's whipping boy. He just constantly gets crapped on, and so Han just blasts him. George Lucas went and changed it so that Greedo shoots at Han first before Han blasts him, and he goes and tries to edit it so that it makes it look like Han moves, but like the editing is so terrible that like it almost looks like like if you're trying to copy and paste like a picture, or not copy and paste, but like shift it over, like you can kind of see you basically just
the difference.
Yeah, you're just like.
Bet you have.
Yes, I bet you have.
I bet you have.
Like that's what it looked like, and then and the blast just kind of goes boop right by Han's head. Han shoots him and he dies. And it's like, and George Lucas went and did that basically to make it seem like just to soften Han, make it seem like he's not such a bad guy. At the beginning of the movie, he's supposed to be a total mercenary, and he comes around and joins the rebellion at the end. But then in subsequent releases, it's been edited so that they essentially shoot simultaneously. But yeah, but in the original, not only does Han shoot first, Greedo never even gets a shot off. And so at the end of the movie with the Han and Beckett showdown, Beckett's trying to say, I've got one last lesson to teach him. It's the most important lesson, and then Han shoots him before he can finish. And I think, in my head at least, it would have made sense if he was about to say, "Always shoot first." And that would have been
an epic ending.
Well, yeah, but also it would have been kind of like addressing the whole Han shot first debacle.
Hi, post edit Allie and Howie again. So this part, our daughter was screaming over the audio, and we don't, we have to deal with that. We don't require you to. So basically, this part is just me saying, that I think the whole Beckett's one lesson to always shoot first is both a callback and a response to the whole Han shot first debacle in the fandom. And basically, if you feel the same or different, or you think I'm reading too much into it, either way, comment, let us know. It's it's basically something that like dawned on my head like as soon like the very first time I saw it. Like, oh man, I think that's them kind of calling out the whole Han shot first thing. What do you think?
Yeah.
But yeah, that just goes to speak to like, like the characters of Han and Kira. Kira keeps saying, I'm not the person that you knew anymore. And Han clearly has this idealized version of her in his head, and she knows she's not going to be able to live up to that.
Yeah, because I mean, whenever you look at Amelia, you already see like a sweetheart. You see somebody that you want to be friends with, and so her saying, I'm
you
not.
See the mother of dragons.
Yes. You see somebody that has a good heart, and she's trying to tell him like the whole time, like, I am not that person. I have done horrible things. Like, I could never be who you think I am. Like, in your mind, like you're infatuated, and your idea of me is not actually correct.
And Han keeps trying to say, like, well, I've done bad things too. I'm not a good guy either.
Yeah.
And but
he
like
still believes they belong together.
Yeah, and but she realizes they don't, that it's not going to work out. That's why she leaves. But the thing is, like, like I said at the beginning of A New Hope, Han is supposed to be like this kind of total mercenary figure. He only does things for money.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of Solo, and he just gives the coaxium to the Cloud Riders.
Hey, post-production, Allie and Howie again. Once again, our daughter was screaming over a section that we were talking about. And the big idea that she was screaming over is that when Han gives the coaxium to the Freedom Riders, how it doesn't really match his character when we meet him. But, like, we have to take into account that this is probably like 10 years before we actually supposed to meet him in A New Hope. But you should, like, it kind of goes to all the legacy characters, like, they didn't really do enough to show them where we first meet them. Like, Han isn't a total mercenary. Even though he is when we first meet him, he's like he's the pirate with the heart of gold, and later on in the saga. But when we first meet him, he's just a pirate, no heart of gold. And so him giving over the coaxium just didn't make a ton of sense to me, at least.
Yeah, and I feel like Han and Kira kind of being different people. And that point constantly being pushed across, but there's also that love interest where she keeps kind of leading him on, and he keeps falling into her a little bit more. Like, the writing just did not really make sense to me, why you keep leading him on, and he keeps kind of being like, let's run away together, and she's like, yeah, no. It's just kind of, it's a bit flawed.
Well, her she's telling him no, but her actions are saying yes.
Yeah, the kissing scene. Yeah, I agree.
Well, just like everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, but again, that's probably more to do with that they wanted a Kira spinoff of some kind than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's because obviously we all know that Han winds up with Leia in the end. So, like, there's no point in teasing this other romantic interest when we all know where it's going to wind up.
Yeah.
So, for plotline purposes in the grand Star Wars universe, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the way to go. That's definitely the way to go. But also, as far as, like, the character work of, like, the character of Kira, it made the character much deeper than any of the other side characters in this movie.
Uh-huh.
Like, and like we said, like, basically for the entire middle section, like, this, basically Han and Kira kind of put this film on their back.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else takes a back seat, even Chewie. Part of that is because Chewie's a Wookiee, so, like, we can't understand what he's saying and stuff. All
That's
that.
like my favorite part, though. Like the communication between Han and Chewie, and how like.
Oh, really? You're cold?
That's literally my favorite part. So it would have been great to actually have that in this one where they start the bantering.
Mm.
But I get that they're not that close to actually banter yet.
You know how they do that, like while they're filming. Like Chewie has actual lines, like, and the actor in the suit says them, and they basically just so that's what Han is reacting to, like whatever, whether it's Alden or Harrison, that's what they're answering and reacting to. And then they just go back and
edit it with actual noise.
Yeah. So I don't know if you ever knew that or not.
I didn't know it, and I love it even more.
Yeah.
That's definitely helpful.
I don't remember if the original Chewbacca actor in the suit was the one who played Chewie in this movie.
Hey, post-production, Allie and Howie again. This time it wasn't because our daughter was screaming. This one was because we were mistaken. So Peter Mayhew, the legendary actor who played Chewbacca in the original trilogy and his one appearance in the prequel trilogy, retired from acting in 2016. His last time in the suit was for Force Awakens. So he was not Chewbacca in Solo or any of the other sequel movies.
Yeah, and he retired in 2016. This film was done in 2018, and he passed away in 2019.
Yeah, he was listed as Chewbacca consultant in The Last Jedi, and that would be his final film credit in the Star Wars series. But yeah, so Chewbacca in this movie was played by a guy by the name of Joonis Suotamo. I believe that's how you pronounce it.
It's pretty good.
Like the thing is, like Peter Mayhew was really tall, but he was also like a trained actor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about Joonis. He might be. I don't know if he will get any roles outside of being a guy in a suit though. But he did a good job as Chewbacca.
And it seems like he was chosen because he was a body double for Peter a few times in previous films.
Yeah. Well, only for The Force Awakens and Last Jedi.
That's why I said previous films.
Yeah, but you made it sound like he like stepped in for him on like regular films too.
Mm-mm.
Like there's Peter Mayhew, and then he just like tags out and stops and steps Joonis, like, and everyone just acts completely normal.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he did a good job. But obviously we all miss Peter Mayhew. Him and Harrison Ford became good friends over time, and like honestly, like Harrison Ford didn't even want to do it without Peter.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, but yep. Post-edit Allie and Howie again. This time it was because our daughter was...
She had qualms.
Yeah.
She wanted to end the show for us.
Yeah, it was getting late. It was getting late for her. It was time to put her down, and she was letting us know, hey, it's time to put me down.
Even though she'd already fallen asleep.
Yeah.
But she wanted to fall asleep differently in her normal area.
Yeah. So, but really... the only thing she was screaming over was us wrapping up the show and letting you all know to please like, subscribe, follow us on all of the social medias. Definitely comment. Tell us, if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, if you think we're crazy, everything that we're saying, whatever. Share. But yeah.
If you're starting on audio, definitely go to video on YouTube because we have all the bonus material of what we're talking about.
Yeah, we insert
in some instances.
Yeah, we insert as many clips to all the different references that we make throughout the show as possible. We only do it on video because it doesn't translate that well over audio. So
and copyright reasons.
Well, yeah, that too. But yeah, so the best way to view this show is via video for right now.
Yeah, best experience.
Yeah, but yeah. Do you have anything else?
No, it's been great.
Yep.
It's a first episode.
And we're gonna wind up dropping it on our daughter's birthday. So
yeah, it's her birthday today.
Yep. But
her first birthday.
Yeah, can't believe it.
Time flies.
Hope you enjoyed yourselves. Thanks for coming, and
we'll see you soon.
Bye.